Welcome to the OIC, otherwise known as the Omnipresent Information Connection podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Peterson.
And I'm the co-host, Noah Hansen. The Omnipresent Information Connection podcast is all about your world and your unique walk on this path called life. We present fascinating, life-changing information from around the world that has been validated. We also authenticate the information by providing you with links to where you can find out more about what we are talking about on our show. This podcast includes historically accurate, genuine facts that have helped shape our daily lives into what they are today. This will be a second episode or a sequel episode to the New Year's episode that was released just last week. And in this episode, I'm really excited about it because it's a specific aspect of New Year's. I would say ultimately a more healthy aspect of New Year's. What is it, Kevin?
It's resolutions.
That is correct. So, resolutions, can you define that for us?
Well, sure. In the dictionary, it's a firm decision to do or not to do something, and then the quality of being determined or resolute. Now, the most important thing about resolutions in itself is that there is thought, action, and then a reaction to the thought and the action.
Mm-hmm. And in most cases, I would say that the thinking goes a lot further than the acting when it comes to resolutions, as far as the statistics go.
Correct, because in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, the English language learner's definition of resolution is the act of finding an answer or solution to a conflict, problem, etc. The act of resolving something, an answer or solution to something, and then the ability of a device to show an image clearly and with a lot of detail. And today we're going to do exactly that. Of this very last piece or portion of it is to be able to bring into clear detail what resolution not only does for you, but to you and those around you.
Awesome. So before we get into that whole specific aspect of what a resolution is and how it affects us emotionally, mentally, spiritually, we can talk about the history of resolutions.
Yeah.
Now, it seems that the history of resolutions all comes from one certain line. The practice of making a resolution all comes from one place. It's sort of lined up as a very specific history of where this practice comes from. So I'll be talking about the history and where it comes from, but you want to tell us exactly where the origins of resolutions come from. What culture started resolutions?
Well, the Babylonians did, and this coincides directly with the Tower of Babel.
Well, they made a commitment to make a tower that was not filled out, so it makes sense that the origins would be so closely related to most of the resolutions made to this day.
Correct.
Resolutions to various Babylonian gods were made during their new year, which, again, if you refer back to our previous podcast, was in March, and between March and April, actually. And they carried out their resolutions to find favor with these pagan gods that they were making them to. So they weren't making them to themselves, as we do often nowadays. They were making them to actual deities. However, not following through with these resolutions was a kind of scary thing back in the day. It indicated a fearful fall out of favor with the gods they made promises to. So there's a lot more conviction in that aspect, but there's a lot more fear as well. So these were made during the 12-day festival called Akitu, and new kings were also chosen during this time. Otherwise, they reaffirmed the king that was already in place. This was actually carried over to the pagan Roman Empire. So before Christianity was put in place as the main sort of religion in Roman culture, Emperor Julius had it in place where the Roman god Janus was the one that they were making promises to in January.
Now, that's what created the Julian calendar, correct?
Yep, in January, the Julian calendar was put in place to make January 1st the turn of the new year. instead of March, the spring season. And at the time, it was also intentioned that they did this because they wanted their new emperor, their new king, because they chose new kings at the time too, at the turn of the new year. They wanted their new king to be put in place in preparation for the wartime that was started in March. So they wanted it sort of settled, their new king to be settled in place for when this war was carried out in the springtime. There were also ancient Jewish traditions that were similar but not quite the same as New Year's resolutions. During Rosh Hashanah, through the holidays and the Day of Atonement, worshippers would reflect on their wrongdoings made over the previous year and seek forgiveness, as well as offer forgiveness to others during the start of the new year. The concept was to set an intention for self-improvement annually, and that was in the Jewish culture.
And who are they trying to seek forgiveness from?
That would be from the Lord of the Old Testament and the New Testament, Yahweh, commonly known as Jehovah. Otherwise, they called him Adonai as well. Many names for that creator God of the Old Testament. Then we move on to the medieval era, and as you'll see, the history sort of lines up. It's all coming from ancient Babylon in the Middle East, but moving upwards into where those religions were moved up into, where Christianity was moved up into in Europe, and then all the way over to America today. In the medieval era, knights would take what was called the peacock vow. And at the end of the year, to reaffirm their commitment to chivalry, they would make commitments on the new year as well. And that was called the peacock vow. And then early Christians also believed that the first day of the new year should be spent in reflection on the past mistakes, just like the Jewish tradition, and resolving to improve oneself in the new year. And now, as you see, that's not exactly the same as a promise to a God. That's more of a reflection period, a sort of understanding in thought of where you need to go in this new year in order to improve oneself. And I think that honestly seems a lot healthier to me, because oftentimes people will go back on their New Year's resolution, or they just won't do it for a span of time. And it's easy to let it just drop off because, well, I already broke the promise to myself. I already broke the promise to the God that I made a promise to. And now I've lost favor with that God in, the ancient Babylonian tradition. So why should I keep on doing this? Why should I keep on making this promise if I've already broken it? I think it's a lot healthier to just reflect and sort of work on improving oneself the way that the early Christians and the ancient Jewish people did.
Right, because you've got reflection and deflection. And the deflection part of it is the outside sources that were prohibiting you from being able to reflect on what was important, what needed to be done at that time.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. It's always good to reflect, but not get lost or not get sort of downcast about what needs to be improved. Reflection is good, but self-blame,
ridicule,
shame, self-shame, all that stuff can really be unhealthy and really sort of lose your motivation for actually getting better. It can do one of two things. It can really help you be convicted to do better in the new year, or it can really make you shameful of yourself and just put you in a pit of despair. And we don't want that for anyone. The new year should be a healthy time for making healthy commitments to oneself and to God. That's the way I see it, at least. Now, then we move on to a lot later in this sort of time period, in this timeline that we have going on. And in 1740, the founder of Methodism, named John Wesley, made a new type of church service, and this was to be put in session during the new year. And again, this is on the Julian calendar, but at this time it was put in place that it was about 200 years after they had made it into the Gregorian calendar, Pope Gregory, in order to sort of put the leap year in place and make the timeline a little more accurate. And you can hear all about that in our previous podcast. But these church services that John Wesley put in place are called covenant renewal services, or also known as watch night services. And as an alternative to secular partying and drunkenness, services with singing, praying, and reflection on the year ahead are taking place, usually on New Year's Eve. So they would look into the new year, what was ahead of them, and what they could do in that new year to improve oneself. So again, that's a lot more similar to the ancient Christians and the ancient medieval traditions and the ancient Jewish traditions of reflection on the previous new year, but also reflecting on what is to come in the year ahead. And I just think that's a whole lot more healthy than making a promise. Even in the New Testament, Jesus says that promises are ultimately unhealthy. You know, they come from evil.
Unless the promise is between you and God.
Right, you have to be committed. You have to understand what gods you're making promises to, because again, if you're making a promise to a Babylonian god that's going to punish you if you break that promise, then that's ultimately going to be an unhealthy thing for the most part.
Yep.
Unless you're really good at making commitments, which most of us aren't.
Absolutely.
Let's be honest. All right, so that's the history of New Year's resolutions. As you see, it doesn't come from many different cultures. It comes from a very select few, mostly Jewish, Hebrew, and Babylonian, and then moving on to early Christianity and medieval knights even. So it's a very specific sort of line of culture that it comes from.
And they're all forms of adoption.
Yep. The Romans adopted the Babylonian resolution tradition, and of course the John Wesley probably got some of his watch night services ideas from early Christianity as well.
Absolutely. And you have to understand is that you have to be mindful of what you adopt in order to be able to then physically in the flesh take that either as a present, a gift, or to be able to know its hindrance, right?
That's right.
So all throughout history, we've had historical lessons of people adopting certain things one way or another in the form of belief that makes them then think or feel that everything is okay, that everything is all right, and that everything will be all right, and that these celebrations, these services, were all about being able to let go and let things be what they are. But what ended up happening out of that, out of the drunken orgies and out of the inappropriate thoughts and feelings and ideas of other people, is other people that not necessarily had the right mindset started to adopt or wanted to be a part of, this way of thinking without thinking things through. Because everyone wants to be connected to something. Mm-hmm. But when you're not connected with the truth, then that's where you go astray. And so New Year's and New Year's Day is all about being able to recapitalize now as a sound Christian, to be able to recapitalize on the purpose of your mission, your vision, and your intention between you and God.
Right.
It's so important to be able to realize that every day that you wake up is now New Year's Day when you're a man or woman of God. Because with traditions, things come and go. Things change. Because back in the day, when we're talking about Christmas in our last podcast, it's about being able to be the gift, not giving a gift. And when people used to be able to come to other people's homes, they used to be able to bear gifts of fruit and nuts and that sort of thing, of some simplicity, because it wasn't about me. It was about we.
Right. Imagine if instead of, worshiping these material gifts that you can give to people, being the gift every single day, waking up as the gift, being able to see the positive effects of you being that gift in other people's lives every single day. It says in the Bible that to give is better than to receive. Well, he's talking about more than giving material objects. He's talking about giving oneself, being in a life of service, which not only is a Christian tradition, not only is a Christian teaching, but it's a teaching of many different religions all over the world, as well as even, when it gets into the New Age, it gets into all sorts of spiritual culture.
Correct.
But many people are just not living this out, unfortunately. It is ultimately a very trying period to be able to change oneself into a completely giving individual. I haven't even mastered it yet, but it is, the rewards are unending. It's
right.
Amazing.
And why do most people on New Year's get depressed?
Well, a lot of people are making these promises to oneself and getting down that they haven't done it in the previous year, I'd say. And another thing is, alcohol's a depressant, so...
well, right. But more importantly is that a lot of people don't have the mission, the vision, the drive, the determination, the will, the yearning to want to be able to actually arrive to a destination of purpose.
So you start the year off already prepared to not follow through with your promise.
Correct. So it's really important that during these celebration times, that it's important to be able to get with people that are somewhat lost, and to be able to share on how you can be able to become unlost.
Right.
And that was really the celebration back in the day. Is being able to bring the lost home, to be able to bring people that didn't have all the stuff that was together and bring them together with other people that had their stuff together, right?
Right, and statistically proven is that if you surround yourself with the people who are going to lift you up in trying to carry out this New Year's resolution, then statistics say that you're more likely to carry that out. Now, overall, though, New Year's resolutions, for the most part, it's over 80% in the last poll that I saw of New Year's resolutions are not carried out in the new year.
Yeah, because it's all about being a joiner versus being able to have something authentic and original, right? So imagine being able to go starting January 1 and focusing on January 1 of the next year, being able to come up with your own resolutions, coming up with your own solutions, coming up with your own intimate, personal, very delicate, emotional, physical, spiritual goals that you're wanting to achieve in your lifetime.
Right. Why look ahead to the year that's right in front of you and not look ahead to the next year, even 5 years in the future? I think it's always healthy to have a vision of where your life is going for the next 10 years.
Yeah, because people that are going nowhere always ask this question: where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Let's ask a real question. Where do you see yourself tomorrow, next week, next month, right? Why is it that lost people always ask that question? Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. It's both good to look at the near future and the far future, because honestly, if you're not looking at both, then, well, if you're looking just at the far future, then what are the steps that need to be put in place right now? What steps can you take right now to ultimately reach that goal? And if you're only looking ahead to the next day, well, you don't really have a mission for your life, do you? You don't really have a mission statement.
Right. And so all these people that talk about goals say that you have to have three things: short-term, mid-range, and long-term goals. And if you don't have a goal board, if you don't have a vision board, if you don't have anything in place set up to be able to keep yourself on track, a journal of any kind, right? Whether it's electronic or written, right? You need to be able to have things in place to be able to put yourself in the place that you see fit today.
So, Kevin, I know you have some ideas on how long it takes to put a habit in place and to sort of settle a habit into oneself. What's the timeline for that in your life?
Well, master habit makers say that it takes 90 days to form a good or bad habit.
90 days.
90 days, right?
So if you can do your New Year's resolution every single day for 90 days, what you're saying is it's going to be a lot easier for you to continue that.
Well, right, because if you do 4 segments of 90 days, you've already have a full year, right?
Yep.
And so imagine doing a 4-step process every 90 days.
A 4-step process for each one of those 90 days?
Yeah.
Well, why a 4-step process? That seems oddly specific.
Yeah, it's very oddly specific because you have to think about where you're wanting to be. Mm-hmm. You then have to be able to act out on being able to put it on a commitment, no matter what you're choosing, whether it's a diary, a dream board, a vision board, anything like that, right?
Right, even your calendar that you look at.
Then the third thing is really crucial and important. You need an accountability partner, someone to be able to keep you in check, someone to be able to keep you balanced, to keep you focused, and keep you driven to be able to stay where you say that you're wanting to be at, right?
Sure thing. That sounds great.
And then the fourth thing, the fourth element, is being able to bring God into that picture, to be able to bring God into that solution, that resolution, that thing that you're wanting to be able to accomplish in the first place, to be able to cement it all together so that when you reach out your hand, the fifth element becomes the very root, the very foundation for what you believe in as a human being to be able to manifest that goal in the first place. So, 4 things, right?
Yeah.
But the fifth one is the most important. It keeps you well grounded, right?
Yeah, I mean, having God in your life, He's omnipresent. He's always there, and it's like having an accountability partner on steroids, because like you can be away from your accountability partner for a few days up to like a few weeks, even months, and completely lose track if you're not texting them, calling them every single day.
Right. And so the third element, being able to have an accountability partner, is very important, right?
Right. An actual physical human being
Correct.
that you can talk to person face to face.
And the reason why women often have what I call soundboard mediums.
Yep. Support friends, I'd say.
Yeah. It's because they understand the value of having to be able to talk it out, to be able to talk to another human being about how they're feeling, how they're thinking, and why they're thinking and feeling the way that they're thinking, right? Mm-hmm. So that they can be able to then make intelligent, well-informed decisions as far as how to be able to move forward from there. 2 minds are better than 1, right?
That's right.
But 3 minds, a holy mind, your mentor, your coach, your guide, whatever you want to call that person, and then you getting together, becoming all one accord, where 3 are, 1 solution arises.
Yep, if they're all on harmony. The same level, harmony on the same level.
Absolutely. So when you talk about resolutions, resolution is the noun form of the verb resolve, which comes from Latin resolver, to loosen, undo, settle. We can still see the meaning in resolution in the sense of an explanation or solution when a problem, conflict, or mystery reaches its resolution. It has been undone, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. And so what we want to be able to focus on, what we really want to be able to grow on, is being able to let go what isn't serving us, what isn't feeding us, what isn't making us whole, what isn't making us complete as people, right?
Right, and we've talked about this in our last series, A New Way of Living. We've talked about how it's just as crucial to let the things go that are holding you back from carrying out this resolution or this commitment, as well as, put the actions in place towards that commitment. You have to let the things go that are holding you back. You have to seek those out and find them. That's where the reflection period in early Christianity comes in, and ancient Jews. The reflection period of the previous year of what needs to be changed is just as important as the reflection on the future year, and what you need to do.
Absolutely. And so bringing things into view and then having a harmonious connection with it, making it a reality today.
Right. It's like the way the Romans went wrong is they are looking to this two-faced God instead of being that looking into the past and the future sort of deity for themselves in their own lives. They are looking to this two-faced God instead of looking to their own lives.
Yeah. And, the Merriam-Webster definition is English language learners' definition of resolution is the act of finding an answer or solution to a conflict, problem, etc. The act of resolving something, an answer or solution to something, the ability of a device to show an image clearly and with a lot of detail. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're trying to do today is bringing into focus your mentality, your physicality, and then your spirituality. No matter what you think and what you're viewing on, however it is, and how you pray is all up to you. Just understand is that as long as you got a mentor, a coach, a teacher, whatever you want to name that person.
Yep, someone who's already committed and carried out their commitment.
Right, and is living the actual life example that you're wanting to be able to live, right?
Walking the walk.
Yeah, that's really extraordinarily important, right? Because anyone can talk, but not hardly anyone can walk, right?
That's right.
And so when you're walking the walk and talking the talk, that's a mentor, that's a coach or a teacher. And then from there, then you combine that with God, and then you throw yourself into the mix where two or more are gathered in Jesus' name, so it's the church, right? And so you become the building, you become the building block, you become the very essence, the very element of what it is that you're wanting to achieve.
Right, you're the walking, talking temple where every single step that you take is a step in the right direction.
And building a stronger, more valued foundation, correct?
That's right.
And so, in closing, it's really important to be able to know the difference between a resolution and a solution.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I want to mention is that, people give themselves an entire year to reach the completion of their resolutions. What if instead of looking at it as you have a year to reach this certain goal, what if you saw every single day as an opportunity to have already met that goal and already carry out the life as if you've already completed it? I think that is a powerful practice that we can sort of get in that sort of mindset for if you are still making resolutions on the new year, see every day as an opportunity for completion instead of the entire year. Baby steps are good, but if you're giving yourself an entire year, there's a lot of room for slack there. If you're giving yourself a day to be the person who has completed it already, then there's a lot more conviction there. Yeah,
so what you're basically saying is that don't allow yourself to be a limiting factor to your own success.
That's right. Imagine if you were not limiting yourself,
right,
not procrastinating anymore.
Because when it comes to real goals and real time doesn't exist with your goals. It happens the exact moment that you literally bring it into fruition.
That's right.
So it's what you do with your goals, your dreams, your desires, your outcomes that creates a ongoing evolution of that reality. And so if you're wanting to be happy and you're starting to master happiness is the final outcome of being happy on a daily basis, right?
Awesome.
So living your resolution on a daily basis helps other people to be able to come into connection with their resolution quicker, sooner, and faster because they see you doing it, and through a natural belief system, they start to believe for themselves that they can be able to achieve it and attain it, and then pretty soon, where two are gathered, a resolution is then solved and resolved.
That's right. And I think we all have those people who we can look to as being that accountability partner in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for listening to the resolution episode. If you love our podcast, then consider supporting us on Patreon. You can find that in the link in the description below.
This has been another life-enhancing, authenticated podcast aired by the OIC and brought to you by the faithful OIC sponsors and contributors. Please tune in every week and subscribe to our podcast. And while you're there, explore our website with all the posts, videos, and podcasts that we have created with you in mind. While you're on the journey through our website, you will see our Patreon page where you can become a faithful contributor yourself with the freedom to be a part of our team today. Thank you.